We have a beauty going on in Canada. We have a chunk of our politicians and electorate wanting to repeat the mistakes of the European Union, especially when it comes to tax, the big bureaucracy, regulation, while at the same time, those same people seem to be working hard to prevent the adoption of best practices when it comes to government services. I mean, it's mind-blowing to think that we have the majority of politicians and people who describe themselves as progressive wanting to bring the failed policies of Europe to Canada. And my goodness, it's so blatant that they've failed. But not many people seem to find that bizarre. Actually, you know what? I have no evidence to suggest that our politicians and those people who call themselves progressive even know what's been going on in Europe, let alone any lessons to learn. Now, at the same time, though, our government show no interest in adopting the best practices approach when it comes to government services. I would have thought this has nothing to do with what side of the political spectrum you see yourself on, what ideology. Wouldn't you want to do whatever government service the best way you can? Here's a quick question. There's no right or wrong answer, just your opinion. Whether we're talking about surgical techniques, healthcare administration, education, management, do you favor a best practices approach designed to get the best results? See, that sounds like the kind of thing that most people would say yes to. But in reality, it's a very different story. You may say yes when it comes to government, but the power groups are saying no. Quick example. We reject monopolies in virtually every area where we consume. We want choice of providers when it comes to our cell phones or cable TV or cars, you name it. Competition encourages innovation, which in turn brings higher levels of service, quality, better prices as companies compete to get your business. The more competition, the more you, the customer, are in charge. We won't find a single management expert who suggests that monopolies are best for encouraging innovation or quality or customer service or efficiency. Yet we have special interest groups and their allies in politics constantly fighting to make sure that government services are a monopoly. I mean, look at the opposition to adopting best practices in managing our healthcare system. Last month, the Canadian Institute of Health Information released a study that showed of 11 different OECD countries evaluated in terms of how long does it take to see a doctor. It concluded that Canada is in last place among all those countries surveyed, nearly 3 times the international average. We're also last in terms of percentage of patients who wait over 4 weeks to see a specialist. Yet we don't see any movement that people maybe learn. What can we learn from other countries like France or Germany or the Netherlands who beat our butts on those kind of questions? When it comes to increasing the competition and ending government monopolies, we're told those are essential services that can't be left to companies operating with an eye to the dreaded profit motive. Really? Well, what about a grocery store? I think most of us would agree that food is essential. Yet I have trouble believing that anyone thinks we'd be better served if we closed all grocery stores and had one big government store to no choice. The point is that we reject best practices in every area of government, though. We don't want them. We also reject merit as the basis for hiring and performance-based pay. But we don't want those best practices. So how are we surprised when we hear about government inefficiency and waste? I mean, what could we expect? The majority of Canadians, at least the leaders they follow, have other priorities that take precedent over best practices. For example, labor leaders are not there to promote efficiency and effectiveness in the public sector. No, they're there to promote and protect their worst performing members. Many politicians with an eye to who makes campaign contributions or fear of taking on public sector unions ignore best practices. Our Auditor General's reports are full of examples of billions of dollars wasted over the years that are a reflection of our refusal to pursue a best practices approach. I mean, you don't have to go any further than you look at what's gone on in the Department of Native Affairs. I mean, it's not from lack of money. It's the management and decision-making structure. Governments have always been against change. I know that. Against performance measures, obviously. And have rejected a best practices approach. But here's the major difference today. Financial pressures created by an aging population, reduced commodity prices, unfunded pension liabilities, and an escalating deficit are far greater. I say we can no longer afford inefficiency and financial waste. It's time to embrace best practices, but I certainly won't be holding my breath.